For those of you who have been listening to this channel, we've been going a lot over A Course in Miracles. In A Course in Miracles, the author of the Course, who is understood to be Jesus, says that it's very difficult to understand God as formless. It's much easier for us who are in form, who are in bodies, to think of God with a body or as a person. We find the same idea in the Bhagavad Gita, and we're gonna go over a verse today that speaks to that issue, and we're gonna compare different translations of the verse. And the verse in question is chapter 12, verse 5. We're gonna look at 18 different translations, starting with my own, and I've been talking about my own translation that is gonna come out on November 5th. It's called the Bhagavad Gita, a new translation for students. It's specifically designed to help those who are into Sanskrit, who want to learn Sanskrit, want to engage with the language a little bit more. So here we go. I hope this is helpful. We'll read it in Sanskrit. Kleśho dhikataras teṣhām avyaktāsakta-chetasām avyakta hi gatir duḥkhaṁ deha-vadbhir avāpyate. Okay, so translation. Greater adhika-tara is their tribulation, kleśha, whose minds teṣhām chetasā whose minds are set on the unmanifest, avyakta is unmanifest, āsakta, and that usually means attached to or set on, fixed on. For truly the goal, gatis, he is like truly or indeed, of the unmanifest, avyakta is difficult, duḥkha, for the embodied, deha-vadbhi, to reach, avāpyate. Okay, so as I look at this, there's some issues I need to correct, but that's okay. So greater is their tribulation, whose minds are set on the unmanifest, for truly the goal of the unmanifest is difficult for the embodied to reach. Unmanifest is God without form, right? That's basically the understanding, is that the formless, God without a form, without a body, without a personality, without a something you can attach your mind to is more challenging than God in form, right? So greater is their tribulation, whose minds are set on the unmanifest, for truly the goal of the unmanifest is difficult for the embodied to reach. Now, this is pretty straightforward, and so we're going to see what the differences in translations are. One difference is we'll see the word unmanifest gets capitalized. Some people capitalize unmanifest. The word dukkha is another word. Dukkha usually means pain or suffering or misery. Here, it's often translated as difficult. But you could say painful also. Painful or involves suffering. So it's difficult. I like difficult. Let's see what Winthrop Sargent is the translation I really based much of my own translation on. So the trouble of those whose minds are fixed on the unmanifest are greater, for the goal of the unmanifest is attained with difficulty by embodied beings. Trouble. Kleśha, trouble. I have tribulation. Yeah. I like tribulation. It's more biblical, right? For the goal of the unmanifest is attained with difficulty by embodied beings. It's basically the same. And he also goes with the lowercase unmanifest as opposed to the uppercase unmanifest, with the uppercase U, a capital U. He uses a lowercase just like I do. All right. Eknat eswaran, yet hazardous and slow is the path to the unrevealed, difficult for physical creatures to tread. Now this is a free translation. This is a his own kind of poetic, more poetic maybe. Hazardous and slow. Dukkha. You know, I think he's adding the slow, but he's kind of like saying, well, that's implicit. It's difficult. It's hard. It's slower. It's a slower path. For avyakta, he has unrevealed versus unmanifest. All right. Okay, we'll go on. And he has a capital U for unrevealed, which is interesting. All right, Swami Shivananda has greater is their trouble whose minds are set on the unmanifested. For the goal, the unmanifested is very difficult for the embodied to reach. Basically the same as Sargent and my own, except he has a capital U for unmanifested. All right, Radhakrishnan has the difficulty of those whose thoughts are set on the unmanifested is greater, for the goal of the unmanifested is hard to reach by the embodied beings. Almost exactly the same as Shivananda, including the capital U. So he has that as well. All right. Prabhavananda and Isherwood, but the devotees of the unmanifest have a harder task because the unmanifest is very difficult for embodied souls to realize. Difficult, difficult, hard for dukkha. But they have a lowercase u. They do not capitalize unmanifest. But they do have unmanifest. They don't have unrevealed. I think that Eknathaswaran might have used Prabhavananda and Isherwood in making his translation, but he apparently did not in that case. Swami Nikalananda, the task of those whose minds are set on the unmanifest with a capital U is more difficult, so he uses the word difficult. For the ideal of the unmanifest is hard to attain for those who are embodied. Hard to attain. Okay. No, all these are more or less the same. Srila Prabhupada, for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme. Now, he adds that, right? He adds the impersonal feature of the Supreme, because it doesn't say that. It says unmanifested, or something like that, right? Unmanifest. Advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. To make progress in that discipline is difficult for those who are embodied. Let's see what he has. I have this one as well. Let's see if that's the same. This is the same translation. So, for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. Same. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. That's the same translation. To make progress in that is. So, Srila Prabhupada, he seems to be very much against the impersonalists, who he calls the impersonalists. And these are the ones who are like the jnanis, the jnana yogis and the bhakti yogis. And he even says that in his commentary. The jnana yogis have a harder time. The bhakti yogis can access the divine much quicker, and the jnanis have a harder row to hoe, as they say, right? They have a harder time. Now, and that may be so. At least he's acknowledging here that the jnana yogis are not incorrect in how they're approaching, right? He's not saying that they're wrong to do that. I don't know if Krishna is saying they're wrong, the jnana yogis. Krishna even says the jnani is very, very dear to him. There's another verse where he says that. Krishna says the jnani is very dear. And it's not even clear, who is greater, the bhakti or the jnani, right? In the Gita, it seems as if the bhakti yogi is dearer, because there's more emphasis put on that, especially towards the end of the Gita. Yet, it could be because of this verse, that Krishna is acknowledging that it's difficult to worship him without a form. On the other hand, maybe there's something that the jnani gets to through his difficult devotion, that the bhakta or the bhakti yogi misses out on, right? And then you have people like Ramana Maharshi, who said that really jnana yoga is the highest path. All of the other paths are leading to jnana yoga. Bhakti yoga is leading to jnana yoga, right? The bhakti, the worship of God in form, is ultimately going to lead to the formless. And that's as I understand it, that's the jnana yogi credo in a sense, or creed is, we have the highest path. Everything else is going to lead to this in the end. Whereas I think Srila Prabhupada and people in that camp, you might say, or that tradition would say, well, bhakti is the ultimate, right? And the jnani is at a lower rung. The jnani is actually kind of foolish, less intelligent, as Srila Prabhupada said elsewhere. He's less intelligent. Let's see what Jeffrey Armstrong says. Jeffrey Armstrong is also in that tradition. Those whose yoga is focused upon my inconceivable, unmanifest, and imperceptible nature follow the most difficult yogic path. For those who are embodied, the pursuit of my quality-less, undifferentiated Brahman nature is the most difficult and troublesome way to approach me. Armstrong does not make a value judgment. He's just, he's adding to what it says. He's filling it out. It's what he tends to do, is he fills out the verse to help to explain it. He has difficult and troublesome. He doesn't have any capitals except for my, capital M for my, for Krishna speaking. But yeah, he's just adding some things to fill it out. All right. Jayadal Goyanka. Of course, the strain is greater for those who have their mind attached to the unmanifest. For atonement with the unmanifest is attained with difficulty by those who are centered in the body. I don't know where he got atonement. And attached. He's making it seem like it's an attachment, like you're attached. These guys are attached to the idea of the unmanifest. He has unmanifest with the capital U. For atonement with the unmanifest, I think he might have meant attainment of the unmanifest, but then he has attained, so he has atonement with the unmanifest is attained with difficulty. He probably meant at one mint with the unmanifest is attained, at one mint, atonement. Anyway, I don't think it's the best translation. But it's basically the same, so these are all basically the same. Swami Tadatmananda, greater is the difficulty for those devoted to formless God. The path to formless God is difficult for people to follow. It's very straightforward. It's very cut and dry. We'll go on. I don't think we need to spend too much time. We're doing this a little quicker today. Embodied beings. This is Parama Karuna Devi. She has embodied beings find much more difficult and painful to make progress if they remain mentally attached to the non-manifested. So she uses non-manifested as opposed to unmanifested. Is there a difference between non and un? Maybe not a big one. Maybe a slight distinction you could make between non and unmanifested. Most people have unmanifested or unmanifest. Could be either one, really. Avyakta could be non-manifested or unmanifested. Just like ahimsa, the word ahimsa could be, it actually cannot be unharm. It's usually non-harm, right? Non-harm. So there's a case to be made that it really should be non-manifested as opposed to unmanifested. Non meaning like not manifested, right? Not manifested. She also has this idea of being mentally attached, which is the same as Jayadaya Goyanka. So they're both translating asakta as attached, right? They're attached, as opposed to like fixed or focused on. They're seeing that as being attached, right? And there's probably some reason to do that. The word probably has that connotation of being attached. Sri Purohit Swami says, but they who thus fix their attention on the absolute and impersonal encounter greater hardships, for it is difficult for those who possess a body to realize me as without one. So he is translating avyakta as absolute and impersonal. And he has fixed as opposed to are attached, right? He has set their attention, fixed their attention. When you say attached, it does sound negative. It sounds like a negative thing. Like these guys are just too attached to the impersonal, formless. Now, we could ask, what was Krishna's, whoever wrote that, what was their intention in writing that? Was that a value judgment? Was that a judgment against those who are set on God without form, beyond form? Is Krishna saying they are less than? Is Krishna saying they're less intelligent? Is Krishna saying they are not as good yogis? BG, and I don't think so, but we'll leave it at an open question. BG Narasimha, there is great difficulty for those whose minds are attached to the impersonal aspect. To progress on that path is most troublesome for embodied beings. Okay, more or less the same. No capitals. Bhagavad Gita.org, those whose minds are attached to the unmanifest aspect have much greater tribulations. Okay, he uses tribulation like me. Because devoid of any perceptible form and attributes, success is achieved with great difficulty due to the beings identifying with the body. Okay. More or less the same, right? He has unmanifest, he has tribulations just like me, he has difficulty just like me. So, I'm okay with that. SupremeKnowledge.org. The way of worship of those men who are engrossed in the invisible Brahm chiefly involves argument like suffering, that is misery, because their state relating to the unmanifest is attained with great difficulty by the arrogant beings. Man, this is bad. This is not as good. Let's not say it's bad. Let's just say this is definitely not as good. Some of the other translations has issues. This has, this is making a value judgment now against those who approach God that way. And I'm not sure if the verse is placing a value judgment. It's just making an observation, whereas this is making more of a value judgment against those who worship God in that way. And it's adding words that aren't even there. So This is where I would say just not as good, right? Swami Mukundananda, for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifest, the path of realization is full of tribulations. He uses the word tribulation. He doesn't have any capitals. Worship of the unmanifest is exceedingly difficult for embodied beings. Okay. Finally, we come to Sir Edwin Arnold. He has, yet hard the travail is for such as bend their minds to reach the unmanifest, that viewless path shall scarce be trod by man bearing the flesh. So he has a nice poetic way of expressing it. And he got it. I have to find out. Let me check when he did his translation. Let's look up Sir Edwin Arnold real quickly here. And we'll just for a moment, focus on him. Edwin Arnold. Yeah, he lived 1832 to 1904. He was an English poet and journalist. He's best known for his 1879 work, The Light of Asia. He was born in Gravesend, Kent. When did he do this translation? Let's see. He did the translation. Song Celestial was 1885. 1885. So he was after the transcendentalists, Emerson and Thoreau and Whitman. But that translation has had an impact, right? It's had an effect. Probably, definitely influenced many others that came after to this day. Anyway, we looked at 18 translations. What did we find? I think we found basically agreement with just about everyone on the basic meaning. Greater is the tribulation whose minds are set on the unmanifest. For truly the goal of the unmanifest is difficult for the embodied to reach. Yeah. I like that translation. I think it's more or less good to go. I may tweak it a little based on what we said today. I don't think it's a good idea to capitalize the unmanifest there. I try to stay away from capitalizing those kinds of words unless it really called for it. Unless it was obviously a name that was given, like if Arjuna says to Krishna, "You are the unmanifest," right? Then you might capitalize unmanifest. Otherwise, I would not capitalize it. You could argue, how would you translate dukkha there? It's an interesting way of using dukkha. How would you translate adhika-tara? How would you translate kleśha? Kleśha, the word kleśha and the word dukkha are used here. How would you translate those two words in this case? The other, maybe, asakta can be translated as attached or clinging, right? So that, then you also have to ask, is that word a value judgment on Krishna's part, whoever wrote the Gita, saying that these people who worship God in this way are attached? Are they, they have an attachment? So that's it. These are questions. These are all good questions, things to think about, things to ponder as you read, as you think about the Gita. And I hope this was helpful. If you listened, I thank you for listening, and would love to hear your comments, your thoughts, anything. And we'll see you next time with more. The translation's coming out November 5th. Please let me know if you would like a PDF copy. I will have that soon for you. And it'll be up on Amazon probably by the 5th or maybe shortly thereafter. So, Hari Om Tat Sat.